You're listening to the Two Guys Talking Podcast Network.
This is the weekly Firecast, episode 41, Spicy Food Adventures with travel host Kevin McCarthy. The weekly Firecast is brought to you in part by Audible.com. You can get a free audiobook download at audibletrial.com/Firecast and choose from over 100,000 titles for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player.
Strap yourselves in. It's time for the weekly Firecast. This is the podcast for all foodies, those who love food that is cooked over a fire or feels like fire in your mouth. If you love spice, smoke, sauce, and all things savory, this is the show for you. And now, here's your host, chili head and barbecuer, Scott Roberts.
And welcome to another slam, bang, fantastic, action-filled episode of the weekly Firecast. Whether you're a hardcore barbecue fanatic, you're a chili head, you love to put hot sauce in everything, you love to grow and eat the world's hottest chili peppers, if you're a fan of real flavor, real substance, and spice, and intensity with your cooking, well, you've come to the right place. I'm your host, Scott Roberts. I'm a blogger, I'm a voiceover artist, and columnist for Chili Pepper magazine. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to the latest episode. This time out, we're going to go outside the box a little bit of what I normally aim to put in the Firecast. I'm going to be speaking with legendary St. Louis radio personality and travel host Kevin McCarthy. Now, Kevin is someone I met a couple years ago. We were both amongst the celebrity judges at the United Cerebral Palsy Wingding. Of course, we hit it off. We had a shared interest in our love of food. And then a couple months ago, while we were eating lunch together, and he just started talking about many of his travel adventures in places like China, and I was thinking to myself, I got to get this guy on the Firecast. He is just so full of stories. I mean, he could probably talk for hours and hours and hours of places he's been to around the world, of course. Again, with our shared love of food, I wanted to get that perspective, that little part of his take on things, and put it in the show for you guys. And like I said, in addition to being a radio host for a number of decades here in St. Louis ever since I was a little kid, Kevin and his wife Sue McCarthy host the Travel Planners Podcast, another podcast here on the Two Guys Talking Podcast Network. And I urge you all to listen to some of those podcasts. Plus, there are just many, many great videos that they produced, which you can find at the numeral 2guystalking.com, or you can click the link in the show notes. And I'll put that up for the YouTube channel, for the podcast-specific channel. Lots of great stuff if you're interested in travel, and who isn't? Also in this episode, during his Ken's Fiery World segment, Ken Alexander reviews a couple of Southern recipes snack foods. Now, I had reviewed these, both cheese curls and pork rinds, in episode 35, which was the same podcast with my interview with wing sauce maker John Dilley of Defcon Sauces. And now it's Ken's turn to give his take on these two spicy snack foods. And since he's reviewing a couple products, we're going to kind of kill two birds with one stone. So I'm not going to have a separate review product for this episode. So we'll just kind of include that one. And plus, as always, I give you a short but sweet foodie tip. And before we get to those segments, I just wanted to tell you what else is brewing. And there's one piece of listener feedback I want to read concerning last week's episode, episode 40, concerning the Ken's Fiery World segments, where we talked about chili heads and social media sites. And this one was actually from Dana Romero of the Louisiana Hot Sauce Festival and the International Hot Sauce Festival. And he writes, "Hey, Scott and Ken, you forgot about LinkedIn.com as a social site. There are a couple of hot sauce communities on there, and it is more professional than Facebook. What do you guys think?" Well, Dana, thank you very much for your question. And yeah, we did. We acted just a brain fart on our parts to forget about LinkedIn. Now, I have a couple things to say about LinkedIn. One is that it still has a long way to go before it's really accepted as a big open social site. It's still very, very business-oriented, where, of course, people post up their resumes and their work projects and so on and so forth. In the main social stream of posts, there's very, very little interaction inside of those posts. So it's like people post up stuff all day long, all night, links. It shows activity when people edit their profiles, add a new job, whatever they happen to do. and it largely goes ignored. So even though there are no doubt tens and tens of millions of LinkedIn members, I think in that aspect, LinkedIn really has not caught on as a big, vibrant, active social community. Now, almost contrary to that, yes, LinkedIn does have some groups where there is some active action. And just like you mentioned, they are far more professional than what you would see on sites like Facebook, where people are acting extremely immature, just flaming and attacking one another. LinkedIn is better for people to jump on there about their specific niche, about their interest, to ask questions, to interact with people. And I think that's a very, very good part of the LinkedIn site. And unfortunately, a lot of people still don't know about these little groups within LinkedIn. And I think if they were able to integrate it more with their stream, their live feed, so to speak, I think people would use LinkedIn quite a bit more. But anyway, yeah, if you're on LinkedIn, be sure to look out some of these hot sauce communities, barbecue communities. There are lots of great communities just on small business and packaging, and where you can ask all kinds of different and great questions. Say if you're a brand new hot sauce maker and really didn't know what to do, LinkedIn is probably one of the best places to start to seek out this kind of information. But again, I think LinkedIn still has a long way to go before it's really socially accepted. And personally, as of this point, it's not a site I use a whole lot. I don't know, maybe that'll change in 6 months or 12 months. There's a lot of potential there, but people have not caught on to it yet. Very similar to Google+. I feel the same way about that. There are a lot of great professional communities starting off on Google+, but the thing is, a lot of people still have not jumped on the Google+ bandwagon to do all of their social interaction the way they have with Facebook. So in the future, that might change. But anyway, thanks for your input, Dana. And all that having been said, I want to know what you all think. What do you think about social media and the whole hot sauce, chili head, barbecue communities? Is there any that we left out? Are there any that you think are overemphasized? What are your thoughts on the whole matter? Jump on over to weeklyfirecast.com, click on the contact link, fill out the form, and let me know what you think of the spicy head and barbecue communities and the social networking sites. The Ultimate Hot Sauce Showdown is still going on at my main blog, scottrobertsweb.com. A few months ago, I asked hundreds of you to nominate what you thought were your favorite sauces, and I whittled the top 64 vote getters down into a 64 bracket tournament-style contest where each round, 2 specific sauces will be pitted up against one another, and you, the blog readers, will get to vote which one you think is better. And then it'll be condensed down to the top 32, the Sweet 16, the Elite 8, Final 4, and then finally the big championship. So as you're listening to this, and I'm recording this in August of 2013, the rest of the summer and into the fall, we will get into that. Of course, this contest is not scientific by any stretch of the imagination. It's all for fun. So again, if you want to vote, again, it depends on when you hear this, you can go over to my main blog again at scottrobertsweb.com and look for the Ultimate Hot Sauce Showdown. And also here in the summer of 2013, the summer here in the Northern Hemisphere, I know I have some listeners down in Australia and New Zealand. I want to give a big shout out to those people. I don't want to leave you behind. Anyway, here in the summer of 2013, there is the Showtime show Dexter Going On. It's the final season of this series about the serial killer of killers. Now, I co-host a podcast with Mike Wilkerson of the Two Guys Talking Podcast Network, and we review each week's episode, tell you our thoughts on it, the goods and the bads, who we thought was the breakout character of the episode, and give you a rating of the episode. So if you're a Dexter fan, you don't want to miss this, and this could also be found at the twoguystalking.com website. Just go to the numeral 2guystalking.com, follow the blood splattered trail. You could download, listen, or subscribe via iTunes. And I can't forget to mention one of my sponsors, Audible. Yes, the biggest audiobook company. I don't know about you, but I don't have a lot of time to sit down with an actual book and read. I'm always on the go. I'm always doing things. So therefore, I'm always listening to stuff on my headphones, whether it be other podcasts or audiobooks. And through Audible, they make it super simple, easy to be able to read these books because they're being read to you. And now for you, the listeners of the Weekly Firecast podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free, yes, free, 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. And the good part of this is there is no catch. If you decide not to sign up with Audible, you get to keep the free audiobook free of charge, no questions asked. But if you do fall in love with the service just like I have, there are just so many great books out there with just about every genre of book under the spectrum you can think of. Now, last week I had mentioned a book on the history of barbecue, and that was really fascinating. And a lot of you are probably Lord of the Rings fans. I am admittedly not a huge fan of them. But you know what, since the series of the movies for The Hobbit are coming out, yes, you can get the unabridged version of The Hobbit in audiobook form. There's great history books, literature, the latest bestsellers. You can go on and on and on. So to take advantage of this offer, you can go to audibletrial.com/Firecast to download your free book and to see whatever other great books you can find. Again, that's audibletrial.com/Firecast for your free audiobook. So anyway, that's enough of me chit-chatting. Let's go ahead and get to the weekly segments here on the Weekly Firecast, proudly part of the Two Guys Talking podcast network.
And now, the Foodie Tip of the Week.
My Foodie Tip of the Week, because it's summertime, is another barbecue and grilling one. My tip is to use a chimney starter to light your charcoal. And you can find these big metal cylindrical containers with a handle at just about any hardware store, home improvement store, or department stores such as Walmart. They can range in price from $10 to really cheapy models to $15 to $20. Anyway, to use these, just place some crumpled newspaper in the bottom of this metal cylinder, then fill it up with charcoal briquettes or lump charcoal, then light the paper. In about 20 minutes, the coals will be nice and hot, ready to put in your grill or your smoker. And this way, you can avoid using lighter fluid and any potential nasty taste that comes from that.
And now, Ken's Fiery World.
Once again on the Skype chat line, I have Chilihead reviewer and blogger Ken Alexander. How's everything going with you?
Hey, Scott, I've had a great day. How about you, man?
Long day, but very productive, very eventful, and it's been a blast.
That's great, man. You know what? I woke up on this side of the dirt, and it automatically qualifies as a good day.
You know, most days are, in the grand scheme
right,
of things.
And your listeners may not know that, you know, we kind of have a set time later in the evening that we sit. It's kind of quiet in the house. And so I always look forward to kind of on these days when I know that we're going to be talking, wrapping those days up. Just makes it even a little more special day.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And today is even more special because I got to eat junk food that I'm going to talk about.
Oh, okay. And these would be the products from Southern Recipe.
That's exactly right. I know these are products that you've reviewed in the past. I think we were both approached by Rudolph Foods publicist about the same time to review a couple of products they have. One brand new product and one existing product. Their cheesy Southern Recipe is one of the brands in their family. So one of these products is their cheesy jalapeno-flavored curls, oven baked with real cheese, that actually they're not releasing. Southern Recipe isn't releasing until later next month or into September, I believe. And then the hot and spicy pork rinds that are also Southern Recipe. I had an opportunity, you know, like yourself, I was sent a bag each of these and had an opportunity to play with them. And, you know, so for me, I wanted to do a little bit more than just sit there with a bag of cheesy jalapeno flavored curls and pork rinds. And so I'll talk about that more in a second, but talk about the cheesy jalapeno flavored curls, the pretty typical national brand cheese curl kind of feel. I won't mention, out of respect to them, I won't mention their competition, but, you know, leaves that orange coating on your fingers, kind of the typical cheese flavor. But this one was a little bit different. You know, I don't eat much kind of convenience, snacky food too much anymore, but I like the flavor of this. They really did a good job picking up a little bit of spice. I thought it was a little spicier than I anticipated. A little bit of an oily texture, but I think that's probably to be expected in any product like that. Mm-hmm. But I did something a little different. So, you know, if you like that kind of a product and you want something with a little zing and a little zap to it, not bad. And if you see them in your local convenience stores or grocery stores and it's something you want to try, give them a whirl, I think you might like it. I cooked with it, and with the pork rinds.
Okay, let's go ahead and hear what you did with the cheesy jalapeno cheese curls first and kind of give your rating on that.
Okay, sure will. I looked to see what could I do to use this. And so I thought about, we were playing with chicken one day and I said, you know what? I wonder if I baked this with this on the chicken. And so I did an egg wash. I did an olive oil, kind of sprayed chicken down, a little bit of olive oil. I had an egg wash and I put the cheese curls in a spice grinder. And grind them real fine with a little bit of panko breadcrumb to kind of give it a filler and give me a little more to work with, and breaded the chicken and baked it. Just baked it in the oven, put it at 375, baked it for 30, 40 minutes till it, the internal temp was correct for chicken, and put it out. And, it did okay for flavor. It was pretty interesting. I saved some back and crushed some up that were fresh to put a little extra crunch at the end, because they cooked into the chicken and they didn't come out crunchy. So, and it turned kind of moist, but it put a decent little bit of flavor and spice. So it was kind of fun. Don't know it's something I repeat on a regular basis, but I had fun doing it anyway. And so, for the category of food that it is, I would give the jalapeno flavored curls probably a 3 Fiery World rating.
3 out of 5.
3 out of 5.
Okay.
A little bit, got a little spice in it, got a little pop, got a little texture, but still it's pretty much what you'd expect in that product line.
You know what? I'm just going to jump in with my thoughts here just for a few seconds.
Sure.
There was something about these that I loved, and it's just that intangible thing that I happen to give 5-star products, that thing that just kind of pushes them over the top and makes them exemplary. And this had it, and it's something called addictability. And I love the taste, but it also made me just want to eat more and more and more. Something just deep down made me fall in love with this product. And it certainly wasn't the greatest thing I've ever had in a snack food, but it had just extreme amounts of addictability. If you listen back to episode 35 when I reviewed them, I think it was like a 4 or 4.5 star review I give this product. I love them.
And for me, it's, I guess, the fact that I don't eat snack food a whole lot anymore. And so the texture's a little different. Now, if I was just rating it for flavor, and you're right, you did have a tendency to keep eating it, and it was fun to play with cooking. But, I would probably give it a 4 just in the flavor alone, a 4 to a 4.5, because I think they did an excellent job getting enough spice to make it interesting, but still make it appeal to their market, which is the mass that's there. Overall, as a snack food, it's a convenience store snack food is a convenience store snack food to me. But they really did that. I would agree with you. They did a great job with their flavor.
What did you think of Southern Recipes hot and spicy pork rinds?
I like these. They were, I like these more than I did the cheese curls, but then I like pork rinds. They were fresh. They were light. They had a nice crunch. They weren't, you didn't have soft spots and hard spots in the same ones as much. They were fairly consistent, a little touch salty, but I guess that's to be expected for a pork rind. You could discern, the chili powder and the paprika. It had a good presence. It had a good balance. This one had addictability for me. I found myself having to make sure I didn't eat the whole bag, so that I had product to review and for what I wanted to use it for. So, I like this. And I did the same thing with this that I did with the cheesy curls, the cheesy jalapeno flavored curls. And then I did the egg wash and cooked and baked it and say, okay, well, and the premise was, you hear a lot of people talk about wrapping chicken with bacon, wrapping anything with bacon. I mean, it's pork, it's bacon, it's bound to be good, right? So I said, well, bacon, pork rinds are pork, skin. So, hey, let's give it a whirl. And it was, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. I can't say that it was great because in baking it, you lose the crunch, but then I, crumbled some up on the top. It wasn't an absolute home run, but it was something different and something fun to do. And it did give a nice difference in texture and flavor to where you almost kind of felt a little bit could get a poor man's bacon wrap or cordon bleu out of the deal. So,
Interesting.
Yeah. So, for these, for hot and spicy, it gave my tongue a little tingle. It had enough oomph to it to where I thought it was playful in its spice. And I gave these a 4 fiery world.
Ah, very nice. Very high rating for that.
It is for the pork rind. So obviously I liked it better than the jalapeno flavored curls. They both get a 4 in flavor. Both of these products. For the whole package and all this, I like the pork rinds better than I did the cheese curls. Now, I will say this: Contact is curious because they've got similar products across several brand names. So if your listeners want to go find these products, they might can find them also under the Rudolph Foods brand. Call their parent company, which is Rudolph Foods out of Lawrenceville, Georgia, and talk to someone there who said that the products are very similar. There may be a slight nuance here and there, but if you can't get Southern Recipe in your market, look for Rudolph Foods. And my guess is that the products are going to be very similar nature with a different manufacturer's label.
Yeah. And I'll go ahead and put up the link to Rudolph Foods in the show notes. I think it's rudolphfoods.com/brand/Southern Recipe.
That's correct. Very good. And that's it for this segment, Scott. I just talk a little bit about, playing with snack food and just an example of something fun and different that you can try with it.
Very good stuff. Very good products. And, of course, my reviews of these were in episode 35, the one with John the Creator Dilly of Defcon Sauces. Well, Ken, thank you very much for your input tonight.
I appreciate it, Scott. I always appreciate the time with your audience and with you, of course. And as those folks are going out and running out to those convenience stores to buy those spicy snack foods, always remember, ladies and gentlemen, that it is a fiery world.
All right. Thanks, Ken. Talk to you later, bud.
Thank you, Scott. Take care.
We're going to go ahead and take a little commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to be speaking with radio host and travel expert Kevin McCarthy on a few of his culinary travel adventures. So stick around.
Things in 1982 were a lot more simple. BMX bikes, the Versailles apartment complex in Schaumburg, Illinois, the sweet, innocent kiss of Andrea Schaefer, and of course, a little film from a man named Steven Spielberg called E.T. Science fiction, the detail of a broken but still together family, the relationships that were made when you were 12, ones that are never again truly realized. It seems a lot heavier than most remember, but all of these things and more await you in the Two Guys Talking perspective review of Steven Spielberg's E.T. 1982 on the Two Guys Talking podcast network. Check it out now at twoguystalking.com. That's the number 2, guystalking.com.
Blood, a dark passenger. The binding ties of clear plastic. They're not just hallmarks of the hit Showtime television program, Dexter. They're bullet points talked about each week on the Dexter podcast from Two Guys Talking. Don't miss out on killer dialogue that leaves you with a bloodlust for more. It's the Two Guys Talking Dexter podcast for Dexter fans. Find out more now at twoguystalking.com. That's the number 2, guystalking.com.
Travel. It's what everyone wants more of in their life. But wow, where do you start?
So many options, so many destinations, and finding the time in one's own schedule. You might think that all is lost, but there's hope on the horizon.
Tune into the Travel Planners Podcast with us, Sue and Kevin McCarthy, to learn about how best to travel, what cities to visit, and catch a glimpse of the variety of ways to make the most of your travel dollars.
From shopping for bargains in London's Portobello Antique Market,
watching monkeys groom each other as you sit on the balcony of your hotel in Malaysia,
sipping rum cocktails while enjoying the sunset over Bloody Bay Bay in Jamaica.
Staying up all night to observe St. Petersburg, Russia's White Nights Festival.
Hiking the Great Wall of China.
Enjoying the grandeur of the Grand Canyon. Or enjoying an unbelievably first-class journey on the Cruise on Rails, the Grand Lux Express.
It's all available now on the Travel Planner podcast with Kevin and Sue McCarthy on the Two Guys Talking Podcast Network, www.twoguystalking.com.
That's the number 2, guystalking.com. Did you get my underwear and stuff packed in the last bag?
I thought you did.
No, I didn't. Okay, be sure to check us out, the Travel Planners Podcast on twoguystalking.com.
Having a friendly, relatable voice can make all the difference in your marketing efforts. Let Scott Roberts' voiceover be that voice. I can give you the goods, whatever your need is, whether it be for commercials, podcasts, voicemail phone systems and on-hold messages, business presentations, websites, audiobooks, and more. If you require a personable, real, down-to-earth voiceover artist, then look no further. You can find out more at scottrobertsvoice.com.
TwoGuysTalkingPoker.com. I'm Vic Porcelli, that's one guy. And Big Slick, a.k.a. Andy Casein, he's the other guy. Hiya.
Hey, that's Mick.
You know, Andy and I catch some hot hands when we're playing poker, but if you want to talk about hot sauces, chili peppers, any food with real heat, it's Scott Roberts and the Weekly Firecast on the Two Guys Talking Podcast Network.
Don't come out here no more. Can't you see that it's late at night?
And we are back. And now here's my interview with travel host Kevin McCarthy.
And now, the Fire Talkers interview.
I am sitting in the Two Guys Talking East studio with none other than broadcaster and travel expert Kevin McCarthy.
Wow, all that?
All that, yeah, and more. And
if
we
you
can get
say
into
so,
that.
Scott. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Very nice facilities. This is the first time I've been here, and this I'm very impressed.
Oh, it's a great place to record. Of course, Mike Wilkerson and I record all kinds of podcasts here,
right?
Which you can hear at twoguystalking.com. But today I want to talk about you. Now, you've been in the broadcast industry for as long as I remember, since I was a little kid. I hope that didn't make you feel bad.
Probably longer than you've been alive, actually, Scott.
Probably,
but
yeah.
I've been on the air here in the St. Louis area since 1975.
Okay, well, I was a little toddler then, so I was still around. And, well, the reason I bring you in today is to talk about some of your travel excursions and how it pertains to food. Now, you
figured me out, didn't you?
That's right. Now, of course, what gave this idea is you and I were talking a couple of weeks ago, just some of the places you visited and some of the food, and I thought, this is a no-brainer for the Weekly Firecast.
Well,
and obviously people eat spicy food worldwide, all kinds of different cuisines and cultures and flavors.
Yes.
So I just kind of wanted to get your take and some of your travel adventures that you've had.
Great.
To have these. Let's go ahead and talk about how you got into travel itself with your wife, Sue.
Well, I've always loved to travel. I mean, going back to my childhood, we went on vacations every year, okay? Like the old Neil Diamond song, pack up the babies, grab the old lady, and everyone goes, okay? Mom would fry up chicken, and Dad built a little thing to cover one side of the back seat for my baby sister, and we went to California, we went to New York, we went to Florida. So I guess I've had the travel bug forever. I got to see Europe for the first time, courtesy of my uncle, Sam, and was stationed in Bremerhaven, Germany, and after that at the U.S. Embassy in Paris, France, during the Vietnam peace talks. Both countries of which have great food and great beer and wine, and I found a home. So as we have continued throughout these many decades, my ex-wife worked for TWA, and was from Europe, so we traveled Europe extensively. Sue and I got married about 13 and a half years ago, and she loves to travel as much as I do. And by a twist of fate, when I was working at KTRS doing weekends, the new program director came in and said, actually he called me and said, "Can you come by? We need to talk." In this business, that usually means you're done. Okay. I said, that's okay. Just send me my paycheck and I'll stop by and get my headphones. He said, no, we are making some changes, but, I think we have a place for you. That's why I want to talk to you. So I came in and he said that he'd come from Phoenix, where they had a very successful travel show that had originally started as like a little 1-minute travel tip thing and expanded into 4 hours on the weekends. So he said, I'd like to start a travel show. When I talked to everyone here in the station, I said, who should do this? And they said, Kevin, he's the guy. He's been everywhere. He's done everything. He's the guy. I said, so if you want to do it, fine. You've still got a job. And if not, then, we'll write you a check. I said, and we'd only been married maybe 6 weeks, 2 or 3 months, and I said, I'm going to assume this involves some travel. He says, oh yeah, you'll be getting offers for trips and things, and yeah, as you travel, as much as you do, I said, all right, I have to beg of you to break the cardinal rule of broadcasting. And he said, what's that? I said, I've only been married less than 90 days, and I am going to ask that I involve my wife. Well, has she been in radio? No. I said, but she spent 20 plus years at Merritt's Communication, writing travel copy and things like that. I said, and she can out-talk me. He said, okay, done. And that's how we got started on it. I think we've been to 48 different countries, all but 5 states in the United States. And my other passion / hobby is food. I love to cook. And as you can see by my waistline, I love to eat. So we've combined it all together, and it only took me this many years to figure it out.
It sounds like a dream come true.
It is. But it is work. When we go somewhere, we are not only the Convention Visitors Bureau or your promotion agency or whatever that is CVB is. They're going to try to get you to see 5 days worth of stuff in 2.5 days over a weekend or something. So you're on a very fast track. And in the meantime, I still have to keep up with my regular Monday through Friday radio show on the oldie station here in St. Louis, KZQZ. We write articles for the Pulse newspaper based in central St. Louis County, and we shoot video for our YouTube site, which has had 324,000 views, plus recording interviews, or in some cases actually doing a live broadcast from wherever we're located. So yeah, you come home sometimes and look at the videotapes just to see where you've been, because you're out of the hotel by 7 or 7:30 in the morning, and it's often midnight or later before you get to bed. So if we get an afternoon to go to the pool or get a massage or the spa or something, that is a miracle. So it is work.
Always running. Oh. And some of those things that you mentioned, I will go ahead and put a link to those websites in the show notes, as always. Let's go ahead and talk about some of your travels. Of course, one of the quintessential examples of spicy food, when people think of it, here in the U.S., it's Louisiana. It's, Cajun, Creole, et cetera. And you had mentioned to me previous to this that you had went on the Boudin Trail.
Right, southwestern Louisiana, right up against the Texas border. If you're not familiar with Boudin, it's ground meat. Okay, and it usually comes in the form of like a bratwurst, which is grilled or sautéed or fried or however you wish to prepare it. They also have Boudin balls, which is just the ground meat paste and seasonings that they sometimes roll in cornmeal and deep fry. If it ain't fried, it ain't food. And the great thing about the Boudin Trail is there's nothing fancy about it. These are all home family recipes, and in some cases, I asked, is this a secret recipe? He goes, yes, sir. And my wife don't even know where the safe deposit box is that it's in. They guard them righteously. And it's always inevitably in the gas station alongside the road, or the family private equivalent of a Quick Trip or whatever. There's no fancy Boudin restaurants. You don't go to Boudin restaurants. This is finger food or hand food or street food. And the butcher shops, in many cases, have their own secret recipe. And it's just, you go from one to the other with a cold beer, and I'm in heaven. And most of them have their own hot sauces. Yeah, I only got really started into the hot sauce type things a few years ago. I mean, people's tastes change. I have never been a fan of just Louisiana hot sauce. To me, that's just hot vinegar. But these others that they make for themselves, besides being hot, they have flavors involved. They spice them and things. And boy, I found a home with that. I love it. When you can feel your face flush and Sue looks over and says, you're starting to sweat, I go, yeah, I'm in.
No, I totally agree with you. There are so many just great flavorful hot sauces.
There is.
Different types of flavor profiles, and it's not just your, as I call it, pepper-colored vinegar.
Yes.
And of course, I'm not going to be knocking Tabasco. I mean, without Tabasco, where would the whole hot sauce industry be nowadays?
Yep.
But
and even when you're in the military, they used to have, I don't know if they still have in the MREs, but in the old Sea Rats and stuff, they had these little baby bottles of Tabasco. Mm-hmm. And if you were in the mess hall, you can always tell somebody that's been in the military when they have eggs in the morning. They will put ketchup and or Tabasco on their eggs because in the mess halls you usually had powdered eggs, and that was the only way you could get them to taste like anything.
Yeah. Well, thank God for those.
Yeah.
So internationally, you've been to many, many places, including China.
Yes, twice to China.
Twice to China. How recent was that?
The last one was about 3.5 years ago. Our first tour was a land-based tour. We flew into Beijing. We did Suzhou, Wuxi, Shanghai. And that was a fast-paced trip, but it was all guided because we don't speak English or don't speak Chinese, and it was very well done. We saw the Great Wall, the Ming tombs, the Summer Palace, the Hidden Gardens, a cruise on Lake Tai, shopping in Shanghai. It was very interesting, particularly because of my size. I'm 6'4", 280 to 300 pounds, depending on what day it is. And I was literally a giant, obviously, in China. And they were so polite, but I told Sue, just walk behind me on the street and watch, because it was like Godzilla was coming at him, and they'd stop.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Of course, that's Japanese comparison. I guess you'd be the Chinese
but
version.
They would walk up to you and hand you your baby. Photo, or the whole family standing under my arms. And again, it was so naively innocent. It was fun. There was nothing that put you off about it at all. They're the friendliest people in the world. We've never been treated nicer anywhere, I don't think. And we ate Chinese food.
Now, there's, of course, the Americanized version of Chinese food, which is in every, strip mall in every town in America, the stuff you find in the little white boxes. Mm-hmm. What is real Chinese food?
Well, that's the basis. Again, like most Americanized cuisine, including Indian or whatever, the American version is less spiced. Mm-hmm. Whether it's herbs and spices or salt and pepper or whatever, American food for the most part, unless you get into like the Boudin Trail or Cajun stuff, is to me fairly bland. So you have the whole gamut of everything from salt to sweet to hot, but they know how to make hot sauce over there. Mm-hmm. A lot of it is the peppers that are chopped up into the food, like red peppers and so on, the Szechuan. But they got some stuff that can light you up.
Did you find anything over there that you had never even heard of in America?
There were things that I still don't know what it was we ate, but they were very good. And I'm not making fun. I mean, I'm serious. What's it like? The fellow from up in Minneapolis. If it looks good, eat it. Typically, the hotels, and we were staying in nice hotels as part of a tour. They had a European breakfast buffet, they had a American breakfast or Western buffet, and they had the Asian Chinese buffet. And they had a form of pickle that it looked like a little cocoon, if you will. In fact, we told one of the people on the thing that it was actually what they were having was pickled cocoons of the animals that make the silkworm cocoons.
Which of course, white?
No, they were green,
Okay.
but they just looked like they'd been pickled, so that could have been a variation of the pickling. But actually, it was a vegetable, like a little cucumber pickle. But that caused her to blow those through her nose. We had a lot of fun, but the food is prepared differently. There was a 13-year-old girl from the St. Louis area with her family, and she ordered a chicken dish, and it came out, and it was bright yellow, whether it was turmeric, whatever spice had been put on it, or if it was just a dye, I have no idea. But it also had the head setting up looking at you, and that was just, the napkin over the top of it, and carried it away and brought it back. It's different, and I would suggest you'd learn to eat with chopsticks. They will, in some cases, bring you a fork and a knife, but everything is very polite and structured. A typical dinner would, in many cases, has the Lazy Susan. And as I told our host there and said on our broadcast from Beijing, I told my mom, I said, I know you're listening, Mom, and I know you wouldn't lie to me, but you've obviously been misinformed. Because there's more food in China than I could ever think of eating.
Yeah, all the starving kids.
Yeah,
yes.
well, and the funny part was our host from the tour agency started laughing, and I went, "Oh my, what did I just say? I've offended him." And I looked over, he's laughing. So we took a break, and he said, "Tell me, your mom told you that you had to eat everything on your plate because the kids in China were starving." I went, "Yeah." He said, well, that's the same thing my mom told us about the American kids, so I guess it's a universal thing.
Probably. We have to find that one country where there's actually kids.
That's it, yeah. But
the
food, they have one thing that was a specialty, and it was in season, called hairy crabs. It's like a soft-shell crab, but they're covered with, it looks like, about a half an inch of hair. It's little follicle things that, assist them, I guess, as they swim or whatever. But that was the specialty. And as you go in and out of the airport, for example, as you're standing there to check in and going through security and checking your bags, they have these signs that show the hairy crab with the circle around it and the red line.
Yeah.
And it says, no crabs. I'm with you on that one, There were just, it was a marvelous experience. We'd go back to China in a minute.
And another great example of spicy food is Indian food.
Yes.
What kind of experiences have you had with that?
Well, I in 1969, while visiting London for a weekend while I was working at the embassy, we were walking around, there's an outer circle around Piccadilly Circus. Piccadilly Circus meaning the circle, and it's like Times Square.
Yeah,
it's where all the
square,
neon lights and everything are. And it was just getting dark, and this is kind of a narrow street. It's called Swallow Court. And this big black guy, he had to be 6'8", in a beefeater's costume. The British beef, the big red thing, with the puff padded shoulders and everything, jumps out, slams up a British salute with the open palm and says, "Governor, have you eaten tonight?" I'm going, no, I haven't. What? Well, step this way. And we got in this little elevator that my date and I barely fit in, went to the second floor, and found ourselves in Vera Swamis' Indian restaurant.
Oh.
It's been there for over 100 years.
And what was that like?
Oh, awesome. Just amazing. They've renovated it over the last decade or so. This was, at that time, was so uniquely Indian that they operated under a caste system. Some of the employees couldn't speak to you. They actually had elephant foot stools that you sat on, just barely sitting off the floor. Sue and I have been back, and it's more modern and, politically correct. There's no elephant foot stools anymore. Darn it, because I wanted to get a picture of them this time.
Oh, obviously. I want to know what one looks like.
Yeah. Well, it just looks like a little sawed-off elephant foot. What else can you say? I had a soup there, a mulligatawny soup, that lit me up. I mean, this was the appetizer, and I couldn't feel my lips by the time the meal got there. Again, you can order it different, hot, cold,
the heat
levels, yeah. And the thing about Indian food that I like is they use so many different spices. There's turmeric, there's cardamom, which is green cardamom ground up, gives things kind of like a lemony citrus taste. You're going, no, that's not lemon, that's cardamom. There's coriander, there's curry, and curry actually is a ground combination of many herbs and spices. It can be red curry, yellow curry, whatever. But the spicing and all, and cayenne pepper is a big part of it. But so many of the herbs and spices in Indian food have now been proven to be healthful. They'll lower your blood pressure. They will dilate your arteries and whatnot. And as you know, there's almost a europhic feeling when you really get some really spicy things as the endorphins break loose. Indian food has much less of a fat content than most any other cuisine. So Indian food's quite healthy besides being quite tasty, and taste that you normally might not have in any other type of cuisine. I love it.
Well, I know, especially typical American cuisine, it's such a completely different taste. I mean, you never really get that unless you go specifically to an Indian restaurant here.
Right. And the thing, Indian food's evolved over 5,000 years. They've got to get it right somewhere along the line. There's not a lot of written recipes because there were so many regions in India, and it was all handed down word to mouth, family to family. So, a dal soup here might not be the same dal soup you get 200 miles down the road, but it's all good. And the idea that, kind of like the Chinese yin-yang thing, they have salty, they have sweet, and they have hot spice. So you offset each food with one of the others.
Yeah.
For a drink, and the British had a great influence there during their time of imperialism. They thought that the Indian food was prepared by the gods. Of course, if you ate British food any time up until the last decade or so, anything would be better. If it wasn't boiled, it wasn't food for the Brits. But they took home a lot of the recipes, and now, for example, in England, you will find an Indian restaurant on almost every corner. It's like a Kentucky Fried Chicken or Pizza Hut or something, and they're all good. But their influences came into the Indian cooking as well. Indian tea is tea with milk in it, which gives you a very smooth taste to offset the heat and so on. They have the lassi, which is a yogurt-based drink that's mixed with either crushed ice or water and various different flavorings. You can have a salty taste. You can have a sweet taste that's done with rose water or syrup or whatever. They have so many different things that you can mix and match and come out with a marvelous meal.
So you had mentioned that you've been all throughout Europe. What are some of the other destinations you've gone to that have had really interesting food?
Well, Germany, and everyone that says pastry, you go to France. No. France has good pastry. Germany has exquisite pastries. Oh my gosh. They're just, and you can go into sit in front of any cafe with what appears like to be everybody's aunt or grandma, and they will be sitting here with a piece of cake 8 inches high and a little cup of coffee, and the pastries are excellent.
I can make short work of them.
Oh, yeah. Went through them like Hannibal through the Alps, Scott. Primarily, their red meat is pork, and then they have chicken. You can get a steak. It's not like, for all intents and purposes, a steak like you would get here. If they get beef on the menu, it's Argentinian beef, which is not so much a stronger taste, but maybe a little tougher cut of meat. And they cut their meat differently, so... Yeah, you're not going to get a New York strip steak. You can get a filet. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty common anywhere in the world. They're heavy on their gravies. I love spätzle, which is a flour-based noodle used in place of potatoes or rice. And you can have a mushroom gravy over it or whatever, or you can have Käsespätzle, or Spätzle mit Käse, which is the spätzle noodles with cheese baked on the top.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Yes, sir. You can have fried spätzle, which is they chill it and then fry it kind of like hash browns. German food is not all heavy, but it's all good. They're not big on spice, but they do have a liqueur or a schnapps called Ratzeputz, and it's primarily a northern Germany thing. It's a dark schnapps, looks like a whiskey, and they call it a Würzig schnapps or spiced schnapps, spicy schnapps. It comes with a fire warning, and I'm not joking. It does. This is think of it as dark-colored Everclear. When you taste it, the first taste is, you go, oh yeah, it kind of tastes like pepper. And it hits bottom and you start gasping for air. It just burns your throat out. You will be belching. If you just have one shot, you will be belching that taste for at least a day and a half, if not 2 days. It's good stuff.
Well, anything that high in proof, yeah, you would be.
It's the schnapp. It's the spicing too.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not just the burn of the alcohol. This has got some fiery stuff in it. It's difficult, if not impossible, to get in the United States. I've got some that I bring back each time we go over there, and I will tell you one thing, a capful of it in your gravy, that's the best gravy you ever tasted, Scott.
Peppermint and gravy.
That's not peppermint, pepper.
Oh, pepper.
Yes,
okay.
This is not peppermint schnapps. I think that's what Dan Deerdorf thought when he when I gave him a shot of it, and he finally said hi to me about 15 years later. But all but dropped him. This is heavy-duty stuff. And, of course, as an American GI over there, you go out with your German buddies and whatnot. And, well, they came to the NCO club one night and they have a sandwich board of every drink, So we had a sidecar, a Bloody Mary, a gimbal, or whatever. And then the next time we went out to the German things, and finally about midnight, he said, "Here, have one of these. It's a Ratzeputz, and there's a shot and a glass of beer." So I'm thinking, Boilermaker, a shot and a beer back. I slammed the shot. They took the beer away and had a great laugh at my expense. But it was a learning experience.
What are your thoughts generally on chili beer? Personally, I'm not too fond of it.
I've not had it. Chili beer?
Yeah, beer that actually has chili peppers, been sitting on it, pickling in the actual beer.
I've not had that. Now, I enjoy a peppered vodka. I'm not much on the citron vodkas and the raspberry and the peach and all that stuff. It's foo-foo stuff. No, where can we get some?
Quite a number of places. I think it was Cave Creek. It's one of the innovators, and I believe they're based out in Arizona. Just do a Google search on them. It's probably something you can buy here in the St. Louis area.
Wait, I'll tell you a place, if you're looking for specialty liquors and liqueurs, there's a little liquor store on Highway 94, First Capitol Drive, right across from the water tower in St. Charles. And it's an Indian fellow who runs it. His real job, he's with IBM or something as a GENIAC engineer, but his Walter Mitty is a liquor store. And he has specialty beers from all over the world. And if I come back from somewhere and say, "Hey, I tried this," he'll have it for me in a week. Yeah. He's really good at that. But he can't find a source or at least a legal source for Ratzeputz.
Well, it's a shame. It's something I would like to try, even, a couple drops maybe.
Sure. I'll get you some. I have some. I should have brought some. I didn't think about it. You would appreciate it. It's almost like those wings that we bit into a couple of years ago when I first met you at the United Cerebral Palsy Wing Dig.
Yeah.
Oh, my. That was an enlightening experience. What was it we had? Is that the Jackalaya or something? That was an Indian pepper.
Jalokia.
Jalokia. Yeah.
Otherwise known as the ghost pepper.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, a brewery recently put out Jalokia beer called Ghost Faced Killa. And I've had some of that.
Yeah.
And, of course, the heat... It has nothing to do with the alcohol. I mean, it's a beer. You're not going to get 180 proof beer, but it's pretty hot, and it does burn quite a bit. Unlike chewing up a ghost chili, I mean, the beer just completely covers your mouth and your throat and your stomach.
Gee,
so
I
it
can't
stings.
wait.
There's a good sting to it. I could tell you're dying to try that.
Oh, yeah. I'd be dying if I did. That's something I wanted to ask you. I have learned to appreciate highly spiced food over the last few years. I said as my appetite, I think, is changing and my taste buds. But do you develop a tolerance or is it just that you like it and I'm ready for the next level?
You absolutely do build up a tolerance. I know a lot of people in different cultures, they raise their children to regularly eat chili peppers and spicy things in their daily cuisine, and they could take the heat. I found myself, even the things that were hot 5 years ago, to me, just kind of taste mild nowadays. So I always, whenever I review something or taste something, I try to take that perspective into account. It's like, well, what about the novices out there who, think Tabasco is mouth-scorching?
Oh, no.
How do I relay this kind of information to them?
That's Kool-Aid compared to some of the stuff that I've experienced with you. And that was another question on those chicken wings that we had. You said not only was it the ghost pepper, but I think you called it a ghost pepper extract, and I'm still not quite certain. I know it's a higher rating. It's not distilled. Is it a chemical process that they draw out the heat from the pepper? How does that work?
Pretty much so. It gets the chemical called capsaicin, which is what makes chili peppers hot. They draw that out. The extract is not from ghost peppers because they're far too expensive to use to get extract. You usually use something like cayenne peppers.
Okay.
Where you can get 100 times the amount for the same price.
Right. And the heat is a referred to as the Scoville Scale.
Scoville Scale, it goes all the way up to 16 million. Now, these extracts could be around
All right, well, let's start with Tabasco sauce and jalapenos, which I don't like jalapenos. I like other hot peppers, but where do they rate?
Jalapenos are around 5,000. They could vary from 2,000, 8,000.
Right.
Jalapenos are kind of unpredictable when it comes to the actual heat. You can taste one, it'll taste relatively mild. Try another one, and it could just burn you. It's just unexpected.
Right. And the ghost pepper?
Ghost pepper, it could range anywhere from as low as maybe 300,000 all the way up past
as low
a
as
million, yes.
No wonder. Okay, I ain't doing those no more, by the way. I'm just telling you that.
Some of the hotter peppers than a ghost pepper. You have, 7-pot peppers, Trinidad scorpions. On average, they will be a little bit hotter than 1 million. Now, the hottest one, the Moruga scorpion chili, that has got as high as 2 million.
Okay. Have you done those?
Oh, yeah. I've grown
I've grown
all them before.
Yeah. You are the better man than I. In our travels, another place that we've traveled to a number of times, Jamaica. And, I love my jerk. That is just, there's a place when you come off the airport at Montego Bay and you turn left and go about 1.5 miles down the road. It's called Scotchy's Jerk House. Oh, my. It's just, it looks like a series of little thatched huts and so on. Mm-hmm. And in the back, they throw out the logs, and then they put logs over the top of that and smoke their meats and stuff there. We were talking, the lady who runs the place, and this was years ago, I don't know if she's still there, her daughter was going to school at Lindenwood. I mean, you talk about a small world.
Yeah.
And we live 2 blocks from there. But Red Stripe beer and jerk of any kind, and I'm in. Just send me the invitation, I'll be there.
Yeah, I think jerk is one of the most underappreciated types of sauces, seasonings, flavors out there.
Yeah, and it's a combination.
It's a combination. To just call it like Jamaican barbecue is totally inaccurate. I mean, you get that really kind of allspice sensation, the taste from Scotch bonnet peppers.
And it can range in heat scale, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but very complex, very peppery kind of taste. It's great.
And they also had a pepper mishmash or whatever, sautéed peppers and onions that were, excellent. So what do you do I know when we first tasted those, and to our audience, I cook by smell and taste, not by measurement. As I brought this chicken wing toward my face, I inhaled and I went, this is going to be trouble. So I bit off a piece no larger than the head of a kitchen match and thought I was going to die. This other fellow, one of the judges there, just chomped into it like it was a regular chicken wing, and I last saw him running out the door with a can of beer. He didn't even bother to open it. He just had it laid sideways on his tongue with tears running down his eyes. Water doesn't cut it. Beer tastes good, but I don't know. Does that help, or is there anything you can take to kill that once you've hurt yourself?
Yes, there is. Water, beer, wine, anything else like that will just spread the capsaicin. It will actually make it worse. What kind of counteracts the capsaicin is a protein called casein, and that is found in really fatty dairy products.
That's what makes cheese.
Yes.
Yeah.
So anything milk, sour cream. If you know that you're going to be like at a spicy wing eating contest, it's good to have something like that on standby. It's just way too much for you. Or if you're just trying to chomp into one of the hottest chili peppers in the world, that will help alleviate the pain somewhat. Of course, I've done it on camera a few times, just eating a whole chili pepper. Sometimes the milk doesn't help all the way. You just have to ride it out.
Can you actually hurt yourself? I mean, and the reason I ask that is I have grown a horseradish this year for the first time. And I was looking at how to prepare it. And it said that when you bring it out of the ground and you cut it up in small cubes to put in your food processor or blender or whatever, it might behoove you to do it outside, certainly in a well-ventilated area, because the fumes, as you grind it, the oils are released, and it can actually burn your nostrils and your eyes, doing permanent damage.
Maybe not so much permanent damage. It will sting. It will hurt.
Yeah.
Which is, why you should do it outside or in a well-ventilated location.
Right. And this was the interesting thing I found. They said that, it will become intolerable to eat unless you, at some point, add either vinegar or lemon juice or something acidic to stop the reaction of the oils the heat being released in the oils.
I think it's more of a flavor thing.
Is it?
And also as a preservative thing in hot sauces, too. I mean, obviously, if you have something acidic, vinegar or something in it, it will enable a hot sauce to stay good for a couple of years.
No, this was the way I was reading about the preparation of it. Back in the day up in Brighton, Illinois, my girlfriend at the time, her grandfather, Harvey Schmidt, he was not Irish, but he would make up turnip kraut in 50-gallon crocks, and his 2-car garage would be filled with these. You did not want to go in there with a cigarette, but you could open the door and it would take your breath away. Turnip kraut the Sportsman's Club would have a pork neck bones and kraut dinner, of course, with beer.
That sounds interesting.
Mighty tasty.
The last subject I want to bring up is barbecue. You've traveled all over America. Do you remember where the best barbecue you've ever eaten was?
In America?
Maybe internationally, too.
Chinese
barbecue.
Oh, yeah. They know how to burn. In America, I lived in Kansas City. There's some great Q out there. St. Louis has some great Q. I'm not a fan of the Carolina, vinegar and mustard sauces. I think St. Louis is underrated in barbecue because there's some great barbecue stands here. Have you ever been out to Barney's Barbecue?
Yes, I have.
On Manchester? Mm-hmm. Yep, Barney Q beans. There ain't nothing better. But they do a kind of a combination. It's a thin sauce. I like my barbecue to be kind of thick and juicy and have a crust on it. Sticky Fingers Barbecue in Tennessee and Kentucky. It's hard to beat.
Well, there's a lot of places.
I mean, that's a commercial place. It's like going to Applebee's or something like that. But just all around, I've never had bad Q at Sticky Fingers. And they retail 2 or 3 different kinds of sauces as well. When I barbecue, I like to do a dry rub. I make a basting sauce out of lemon juice and oil and a little Worcestershire and garlic and maybe some dried onions and whatnot. Use a big basting brush or pastry brush and just keep it wet as I smoke it. And the trick to any good barbecue is you don't put the sauce on until you're almost ready to serve, because most sauces have so much sugar content they burn, and everybody goes, "Oh, that's horrible," So,
or sometimes not at all if you have a really good Q.
Oh yeah. I have no problem with just a dry Q. Yeah, you bet.
Oh, exactly. That's why I tell everybody, focus on the seasoning, the rub.
Yep.
Get that right. And do the rest, and like you mentioned, the basting, or sometimes called mopping.
Yep.
Just to keep the meat moist. That's about all you need.
My mom used to pre-cook or parboil ribs, I think, just because she didn't want to spend that much time on the grill. I never cook ribs over the coals. You have to, you keep one side of the grill with the coals and your ribs on the other side so that they don't burn. Mm-hmm. You can put a couple little coals under there just so that, or some of the ashes, so that when the meat drips, it smokes. But, that's living large.
Exactly. That's what life is all about.
You bet.
And traveling, too.
Yes.
Well, Kevin, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here in the studio. I appreciate you coming in and telling everybody a few stories, talking about food.
Wow, it's a pleasure. One of my heroes is the fellow up, as I mentioned up there, Andrew Zimmern. He says, if it looks good, eat it. Do you know, he has a radio show too, and it's sponsored by Pepto-Bismol.
Perfect.
And he is funny. I mean, you see him on Impossible Eats or whatever, and he's good, but boy, you get him on a show and he's just hilarious. Anthony Bourdain, I think, does a nice job of really going out and finding the unusual things. Not necessarily the most outrageous, but of the local cuisines and stuff. And that's kind of what we try to do. Wherever we go, we eat whatever is there. They're getting by living on it. I've only had one reaction to any kind of food, and that was out of Las Vegas. I don't know what it was, but I can tell you every bathroom between Las Vegas and Phoenix. Been there, done that.
Going to have to call it something.
Yeah.
McCarthy Trail or
That's
something.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's not a pretty picture, Scott.
Well, again, I'll go ahead and put all the links to all of your media stuff
Super.
and the show notes of the show so everybody could check you out. Again, Kevin McCarthy, travel expert and broadcaster here in St. Louis for a long time.
One of the YouTube videos is of the what's called the Pullman Rail Service, a newly restored Pullman cars we took from Chicago to New Orleans, and the food on there was exquisite. You can see it on the video.
Awesome. I'll definitely look for that. Cool. Well,
Thanks
Kevin,
for the
thank you very much.
opportunity.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Another stellar guest there. I want to thank Kevin for appearing on the Firecast. And again, if you want to see any of his travel exploits, you can listen to the Travel Planner podcast. You can view his YouTube videos on his YouTube channel. And I will go ahead and put the link up in the show notes for episode 41 of the Weekly Firecast. And you can find those show notes at a couple different places. One is at weeklyfirecast.com, or you can go to the main podcast network page at the numeral 2, guystalking.com/Firecast. Just look for episode 41 with Kevin McCarthy, view that entry, and then any major links mentioned in this or any other episode are listed right there conveniently in the show notes. And thanks again for Ken Alexander for his great segment. His Southern Recipe product spicy snack foods reviewed can be found at the Southern Recipe website at rudolphfoods.com. That will also be in the show notes. And if you're unfamiliar with my blog, you can visit it at scottrobertsweb.com. That's my main base of operations on the web. It's been a hot sauce, spicy food blog for a number of years. There's a lot of old product reviews, coverage of fiery food festivals, news, etc., etc. So if you're interested in seeing and reading more about what I've done, you can just go to scottrobertsweb.com. And I'm also on the social media networks. If you're on Facebook, be sure to like my page at facebook.com/ScottRobertsWeb. You can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/ScottRoberts. And I'm also on YouTube, LinkedIn, Pinterest, etc., etc. To find these sites, just simply do a Google search for Scott Roberts or Scott Roberts Web. And I'm usually right at the top of the search results. And while you're perusing the web, don't forget to give me feedback. Anything good, anything bad you want to mention about the show, I want to hear from you. Suggestions for topics and guests, products to review. There are a couple extremely easy ways of getting a hold of me. Again, you can just go to weeklyfirecast.com, go to the contact page, fill out the super simple web form, and let me know what's on your mind. Or you can go to the main network podcast page at twoguystalking.com, click on the contact link at the top, and fill out the super simple web form there. Well, anyway, that wraps it up for another edition of the Weekly Firecast. Until next time, compadres, remember, keep it burning.
This has been the Weekly Firecast. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast via iTunes or at the official website at scottrobertsweb.com/weeklyfirecast. The Weekly Firecast is part of the Two Guys Talking podcast network. For more information on other great Two Guys Talking programming, you can go to twoguystalking.com. That's the number 2, guystalking.com. Thanks for listening. And remember, keep it burning.